Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Centac's webinar series, 5 Ways to Streamline Your Continuous Readiness Program. Before we begin today's webinar, I would like to cover just a few webinar logistics with our participants this morning. As you join today's call, you have been placed in webinar or listen-only mode. Should you have any technical difficulties along the way, you can use the chat panel. It is located on the right-hand side of your screen. Type in your issue or your message, and we'll do our best to assist you. Should you need to leave for any reason, today's webinar is being recorded, and we will send out a link to the recording after our presentation today. Our agenda this morning will include our introductions, the webinar content itself, and we did leave time for a question and answer session at the end of our session. Should you have any questions during the webinar, you can use the question panel, again located at the right-hand side of your screen, and you can type in your questions at any time, but we will wait until the end of the webinar to answer them. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Lynn O'Donnell, the Director of Marketing for Centac. My experience includes 20+ years in healthcare marketing. Our presenter this morning is Chris Doobie, the Chief Operating Officer for Centac, with 12 years in healthcare information technology, as well as hospital support services. At this point, I would like to introduce Chris and turn our presentation over to him. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks a lot, Lynn, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm going to go over the agenda first, and then I'll jump right into our content. So today I'm going to start with just giving a brief overview of Centac, who we are and what we do. And then I'll jump right into some of the challenges that I've experienced in my past, but also that we see at Centac with staying ready. And then I'll get into 5 ways that we can help streamline the process, or recommendations that we have to streamline those processes to stay ready. And then Lynn mentioned that she'll leave some time for question and answer at the end. Before we jump into the content, though, I just want to take a second to talk about some of my experience as I might reference it as I'm going through the presentation. So I started my healthcare career working for hospitals. Started at Orlando Health. I was there for 5 years. I headed up the medical transportation department, which included critical care ground, ALS, BLS, stretcher vans, as well as a handful of support departments. After that, I joined the team at the University of Virginia Health System, and headed up patient logistics and support services, and consulted for about a year after that, where I had the opportunity to really travel the country, see a lot of different hospitals, how they operate from Oregon to New England to Florida, and then joined the healthcare IT side, and I've had a few roles on the healthcare IT side. Jumping right into our content here, I want to talk for a second about Centac and who we are and what we do. Centac is a cloud-based software company. We provide solutions to about 450 healthcare organizations across the country. We have been able to help those organizations improve their quality, increase efficiency, and enhance the patient experience. We've been in business for 13 years now and have experienced 97% customer retention. You'll see from just a sampling of our clients there that we have a wide range and are able to expand and adapt our platform to meet the needs of our customers, from large IDNs to academic medical centers and even to specialty care, and really across the continuum from ambulatory to acute care, as well as long-term care. Now jumping into the readiness challenges, and again, I'm going to be able to speak to this both from the hospital side, but also consulting and healthcare IT, and just talk about some of the challenges that you might be facing or that you've experienced. One of the ways that hospitals can stay continuously ready is by performing surveys. So there's a lot of different types of surveys out there. All hospitals call them something different, whether it's tracers or mock surveys or audits or rounds, inspections, observations, and so on. and they likely have different purposes. Maybe they are more geared towards staying compliant with regulatory standards. You might have a Joint Commission or CMS visit coming up. They might be more focused on clinical outcomes and the care that you're delivering, as well as infection prevention. And really, the purpose of these surveys is to target and identify issues or deficiencies and to resolve them and minimize variation throughout that process. And again, for your organization, this could look like a lot of different things, but I'm sure that all of you are performing some type of surveys to make sure that you're adhering to your policies or regulatory standards, or to improve safety in your organization. So jumping right into the goal of a survey program and why you might have a survey program. From what I've seen, there are really 5 goals that you can roll up all of those initiatives to. And those are building and maintaining a culture of safety, establishing accountability measures, creating systems to continuously improve, reporting quality and safety data accurately, and removing barriers to success. So when you implement a survey program, there are typically a lot of challenges that can go along with that. And a lot of times I've seen manual processes, or at the very least disparate processes, where maybe lab and pharmacy and infection prevention departments and then your accreditation departments are all kind of doing their own thing, and there's different processes throughout the organization. But what we've seen really in all those processes, the 3 big challenges here are aligning with best practices, developing your content, making sure that it's staying up to date, making sure that it's aligned with industry standards, and being able to standardize that across your organization. The second challenge that we've seen is managing the program. So it's great to have that content and to keep it up to date, but now it needs to be distributed. You need to educate your staff. You need to track the completion of your initiatives. But then as you're finding deficiencies or issues throughout your facility, how are they being resolved? Are they being resolved, period, and are you able to drive adoption with your processes? And then measuring the results. So you're collecting all of this data, you're performing surveys, but are you really getting the most out of your survey resources, those that are out there actually performing rounds, performing surveys and observations, and are you able to find ways to optimize their efforts? So now jumping into 5 recommendations that we have to streamline this process to stay ready. The first one is in your content development. So as you're developing content, what we recommend is addressing the state of the union. So you have, as I talked about earlier, all of these different surveys, lots of different questions across your organizations that might be operating in silos, different surveys being conducted by different departments. So we recommend that you aggregate all those surveys across your enterprise, and then start to look at consolidating and streamlining the questions and surveys. And what you might find, and what we've found, is that you might have the same question being asked in several different surveys, and maybe it's worded a little bit differently, but the process or the outcome that you're looking to get from that is really the same. And then standardize all your questions across your disciplines. So there are ways to look at all your questions, aggregate them into a database, and across all of your disciplines, standardize them, tie them to regulatory standards so that you are able to run reports and pull data based on elements of performance, and then stay current. As CMS and Joint Commission and other regulatory bodies are changing their practices and their standards, we recommend that you stay current, whether it's on a quarterly basis, you have a process, or whatever the case may be. Adapt your surveys to your workflows and to your safety and compliance goals. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means in the next couple of slides as well. But you'll see here just an example of Centac's solution where we provide a database of over 3,000 questions that are all tied to best practices or elements of performance within Joint Commission and updated quarterly. So that is a method to which you can you can help develop and manage your content. Moving on to our next recommendation is when you're implementing a methodology. Develop a survey schedule. And when you're developing that survey schedule, you should be thinking about, who do I need to be performing surveys? What expertise is needed? Is it more clinical? Is it more support and facilities? And what level also of employee? With your goals, you might be looking to drive change up on your units, whether it's more staff education, or it could be something as simple as storage practices or hand hygiene compliance. What level of employee do you need to drive change within your organization? And then frequency of your surveys, both from a regulatory compliance perspective, if it's your EOC rounds, doing them twice in your clinical areas, once in your non-clinical areas, but also what is the frequency that's going to help you meet your goals. And we see a variety of different schedules, whether it is a Friday round that all of leaders go out and perform, or something that is a little bit less centralized. So there's a lot of different practices here. And then establish accountability. So it's great that you have a schedule and that you're getting surveys out to the right people at the right time, but establish accountability measures so you know that they are actually being completed and that they're being completed accurately. Just a screenshot here of Centac's survey tool, where we can help hospitals automatically distribute surveys, but then also track when they are overdue, or when those that are supposed to be performing the survey haven't, and we can send notifications either to you as the initiative owner or to their supervisor as well, and escalate those if they continue to be out of standard. And then moving on to performing surveys. So when you're performing surveys, use the most efficient method possible. So not everyone has an automation tool. So what makes the most sense for your organization, whether it's a share drive, emails, education forum that happens every Friday, how can you get these surveys to the surveyors in the easiest way possible and eliminate any manual processes? Be precise with your surveys. So you might have a weekly round where you're asking managers and directors and above to come off of their units or come out of their areas and spend the time surveying. Make sure that you are as precise as you can and focused on the highest impact with your surveyors. Make it easy for them to actually perform the survey, make the process efficient, create a natural flow for your surveys. So if that is your common areas and then getting into your patient rooms, or whatever is going to make the most sense for them to actually perform the survey, so they're not flipping from one section to another, or one part of the survey to another. And drive towards real-time capturing data. So what I have seen is the closer to real-time or real-time data capture that you can get, the more efficient you're going to be, but also the more accurate that data is going to be. We've seen processes where there's a Friday round every morning, and then the data capture doesn't happen until the surveyors are able to go back to their desk on Monday, Tuesday, or even Wednesday, and that really compromises the data that is captured. So one way to do this, just looking at Centac's survey tool here, is to have a bring your own device policy, or provide tablets or mobile devices where surveyors can go out and in real time capture that data, save any surveys that they may get pulled away from. We know that surveyors get phone calls or pages, or they just want to deal with an issue in real time as they come across it. So able to save the data in real time and drive adoption. So we know that if there are going to be manual processes and inefficiencies, adoption is going to be very challenging for this type of initiative. Then moving on to our fourth recommendation, creating action and closing the loop. So it's great that you're out there performing rounds and that you're driving adoption and creating an efficient process. But from my experience, and I can relate to this at UVA, for example, if you're finding the same things over and over again, it can both become frustrating for your surveyors who are continuing to find the same issue, but also for your the areas that are responsible for follow-up, where they might get the same phone call every Friday about an issue that they are aware of and that they're working to resolve. So negative response in a survey should equal action. If someone says no and the answer should be yes, real simple, that should mean that something happens. However, the something shouldn't be a text message by the surveyor or a phone call or a shoulder tap, which we've all probably experienced. Sometimes it's just easier to pick up the phone and call facilities because you're friends with a manager or director there and go to lunch with him or her, and you're able to pick up that phone and say, hey, I found this issue, can you resolve it? Well, what we lack there in that type of process is accountability, and accountability on the follow-up, but also closing the loop. So we recommend that you develop a process where you can eliminate those one-offs and drive accountability in a true closed loop process. Just an example of a solution for this step is Centac's solution to manage our deficiency tickets. So as surveys are performed in Centac's solution, any negative responses or negative answers to questions are going to drive deficiency tickets, which are automatically routed to not just the right department, but the employee in that department that has the right skill in the right location and can resolve the issue. So it could be the nurse educator on unit, it could be the facilities personnel or environmental, and so on. And then tracking the progress in real time as the deficiency is being resolved. So I remember in my days at UVA when Joint Commission would come, we had a command center down in the basement and a team of folks that would be following around the surveyors, and they would be text messaging the command center saying they're heading to 4 West or 4 East, and down in the basement we would be pulling records and seeing when the last time we surveyed and what the issues were that we found, and making phone calls to say, are they completed, are they done, did we follow up? You know, with a tool like this, you're able to see all of that in real time, see when the surveys were performed, and track the resolution of any issues that were found in real time as well. So a very, very helpful tool. And then our last recommendation is measure your performance. So we know that hospitals make a huge investment in this type of program where they might have, maybe it's 10 people every week or maybe it's 100 people every week going on and performing rounds. How do you measure the results, the performance? Is that really working and is it driving real change? So standardize your data across your enterprise, across all of your departments and all of these initiatives. It might be from your patient satisfaction rounds to your infection prevention observations. Standardize and consolidate all of that data across your enterprise. Communicate your performance. One of the best ways to drive change is to track the data and communicate it to your teams. Communicate it by unit or in your daily huddles or whatever the best method is for you. But it can help you redirect your organizational focus and drive change up on your units or even in your leadership teams. And it's very helpful to establish senior champions. It might be champions on your unit, but also in your senior leadership team, so that you are driving that adoption and seeing real change when you're looking at your results. And then as you examine your results, determine the program's effectiveness. So are we actually moving the needle when it comes to patient safety or when it comes to preparing for Joint Commission? Are we seeing less issues or deficiencies up there in the unit as we perform our weekly rounds, or is it just staying the same? What units are more problematic than others? Where do we need to focus our energy? So identify those problem areas. Adapt your content and schedule. You might find that after implementing a program like this for 6 months or 8 months, that you're really able to adapt your content. Maybe certain questions you're constantly getting 100% on, and you need to ask less of those type of questions and more of some other questions. Or maybe you need to focus on an older part of the building or a wing that hasn't been renovated or something like that, a facility issue more, or target staff education more, those type of things. So adapt your content and your schedule and your program accordingly, and then target those problem areas that if you have a Joint Commission visit pending in the next quarter, hit the areas that are going to have the most impact for you. And then, maybe most importantly is optimize your rounding resources. If you want to drive adoption and really get people committed to this type of program, you have to be able to optimize those resources and make them feel that not only it's an efficient process, but they are having a real impact on patient safety, on your readiness, and on your staff satisfaction, your patient satisfaction. They have to feel like they're making that type of impact. Just an example of some of the reports that you can get out of Syntax Solution, and I would recommend, even if you didn't have an automation tool, trying to aggregate data in this way, where you can create visuals to compile surveys across your organization, and then be able to slice and dice that data by unit, by survey type, by frequency, and so on, and track and trend it over a period of time to make sure that the investment that you're making in those rounding resources and the people going out there and performing surveys is having a real impact on your organization and your preparedness. So just a quick summary of the content that we covered today. Develop your content, aggregate your surveys, consolidate questions and surveys, and standardize them across your organization, and stay current with your regulatory standards. Our second recommendation is, when you're implementing a methodology, develop your schedule that fits your needs and will help you reach your goals and stay compliant with regulatory standards. But then also establish accountability measures. Make sure that your process is being followed and that you're able to adhere to your schedule and have surveyors perform the surveys at the time frames that you allotted. Then when you're performing your surveys, make them as efficient as you possibly can. Be precise with the surveys and the data and the flow, and try to make it as real-time as possible. Capture that data in real time to drive accuracy and efficiency. And then create action. So as you're finding issues, create action around any deficiencies or issues that are found, any negative responses. Create a follow-up process and accountability. So when those issues are found, what is the follow-up process? How can you make sure that it's being completed, and close the loop with everybody that's involved in real time? And then when you're measuring your performance, standardize the data, communicate performance to your teams, track results, and optimize your rounding resources. So, Lynn, that is all of the content that I have today. I know that you left some time for question and answer, so I think we can jump right into that.
Thank you very much, Chris. As Chris mentioned, this is our question and answer session for the webinar. Attendees can use the question panel. It's located on the right-hand side of your screen. Type in your question, and I'll read it out loud, and we'll get you an answer. We've got plenty of time today, but should we run out of time, we certainly will take all the questions that we have, compile them, and send out a list of answers to all of our attendees. We did have a few questions come in during our actual presentation. Chris, our first question: how quickly have you seen organizations implement an automated readiness program?
It really depends on the scale. So we have worked with organizations that are looking to really standardize all of their survey and rounding practices across their enterprise, across the organization. And that could be 5, 6 hospitals and a lot of different surveys. So something like that could take maybe 3, 4 months. But we've also worked with organizations that are really laser focused on one thing. Fairly recently we worked with an organization that's actually expecting a Joint Commission visit in October. And a couple months back, they felt like they weren't ready in a few areas. So we were able to get them moving with 5 surveys, just 5 survey templates, and establish a process. And we were able to do that within 2 weeks. So it really depends on the scale and scope of what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Chris. Our next question: we have hundreds of surveys. When you automate, is there generally a way to bucket surveys into smaller groups, or does the surveyor have to search through an entire library?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Syntax philosophy, what we've done in our application is we've created a hierarchy. So we will have an initiative that will have a folder. So your folder might be infection prevention. And that folder might have 4 or 5 different surveys associated with it. But yes, we can absolutely create a hierarchy that might have questions that roll up to surveys, surveys that roll up to folders. But then we're also able to bring it back down to a level where we can tie each of those questions to elements of performance in Joint Commission, or standards within CMS. So we're able to say, here's how you're doing in a survey, which rolls up to a folder or initiative. But across all of those folders, all of those surveys, with this question that rolls up to an element of performance, here's how you're doing as an organization. So there's a lot of different ways to create a hierarchy and slice and dice the data and questions.
Okay. Another question from our participants. Do you have the tools installed in a local server, or do you have staff in the facility? How does it work?
Yeah, good question. So we are a cloud-based software provider, so everything is hosted by Centact. We do provide consulting and implementation and training services. So a typical engagement with a hospital, we would have some consultants come in, work with you on your surveys, kind of going back to that step 1 and 2. So what surveys do you have across your organization? How can we help you consolidate those questions and those surveys, work with you on your templates, and configure our software to fit your needs? And then we have client services managers that are going to reach back out after 3 months and 6 months and make sure that you're meeting your goals and that you're able to adjust our solution to fit your needs. We've seen hospitals that want to implement their survey templates right out the gate and don't want to make any changes, so we do that. And then we find after they're able to collect the data that they adjust over time. So it might be 3 or 6 months of collecting data, and they're saying, yeah, we need to adjust and adapt our surveys to really reach our goals. So we will provide the resources to do that.
Okay, another question from our group. In the organizations that use your product, what has been the biggest hurdle to adoption, and how have they overcome it?
That is an excellent question. So I think it really varies from one organization to the next, and also the size of the organization. When we typically engage a hospital that has manual processes, some of the biggest challenges are getting buy-in from your actual surveyors to do a very labor-intense process. So streamlining, creating a tool, for example, if you can say, well, pull it up on your mobile device, we'll actually push it to you, you click on a link and you perform the survey, does make it a lot easier for them. I know from experience there's a lot of fires to put out every day in the hospital, and no one who's performing surveys has a lot of time on their hands. I know that from personal experience. So if you can make it as efficient as possible, I would say you're going to drive adoption. Make your survey questions as precise as possible, and make them feel like they're having an impact. The last thing that you want to do is have eyes rolling in the crowd when you're up there saying, hey, these are the surveys that we want to do this week, either because they don't feel like those questions are going to have an impact or are addressing real issues, or because, well, we did that last week and I'm going to find the same issue this week. Those type of things are really going to impact your adoption. And really, it's not just software. I work for a software company, so Lynn, don't throw any daggers at me here, but it is about the process. It takes people, process, and technology in order to make this happen. So, in your support areas, if you're finding issues, for example, and it's an EVS issue, we have to make sure that there's a process and environmental services to follow up with that. So it's not as simple as, and I don't want you to think that it's as simple as implement technology and magic happens. There is a process element to this, and a follow-up element, and having senior leadership champion your initiatives is really going to help make an impact.
Okay, another question. Does SciTech have templates already in place for each of the Joint Commission standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our database, we have questions that are all tied to either best practices. We lump them by folder, so we've seen best practices over the 13 years. But we also have a database that's tied to elements of performance. And they are kept up to date on a quarterly basis. So you can absolutely pull them straight from the database, build your surveys, and then you can also customize those questions. So we have seen hospitals that want a straight yes, no. We've seen hospitals that want a scoring answer. And there's a lot of different ways. Do you want to ask it as a question or a statement? So there's a lot of different ways to take those templates, take those questions, and adapt them to your needs. But yes, we absolutely, when we engage our clients, we like to provide a solution. So we'll offer recommendations. And again, some clients say, well, I want to use what I have. Can we just upload these? And some say, you know, give me your recommendations. We also have a user group. So our network, we're able to connect our clients with others that are facing similar challenges. And, you know, we've talked today a lot about readiness and being ready for Joint Commission. We haven't talked a lot about, well, after Joint Commission left, I have some follow-up to do. I have some action items. What do I do then? So, you know, we have templates for both, but then we also can leverage our user network to connect with people that have been there, done that recently, or have developed some best practices that have really worked for them. And we've seen actually in our user network friendships spark from those connections, and our clients are communicating on a regular basis about, you know, things, challenges that they're facing or changes that they're making within their organizations.
Thank you. Our next question, is this available for mobile devices or is it primarily computer-based?
Both. So we are able to adapt to really any environment, whether it's Android or your iOS platform, also on your computers, tablets. So there's a lot of different methods to performing these surveys.
Okay, thank you, Chris. How does your service compare to another product called Verge Solutions that monitors, compliance with Joint Commission?
You know, we actually have a relationship with Verge and are talking to them about a partnership. I would say that we are more complementary than competitive. Verge specializes really in compliance and risk management. I know that they have a survey tool, but I would say that our wheelhouse is more in performing surveys and following up with issue resolution. We have other solutions within our platform that we didn't talk about today that are really focused on support services and other action within the hospital, managing all of your requests and orders that might come in for different things. So I would say we specialize in different areas. But I would say the biggest difference between us and Verge and our survey capabilities is that we do have that database. We are able to tie all of your questions to Joint Commission elements of performance, and you have the ability to run reports on those elements. We update them quarterly. Another difference is we've been doing this for a long time. We've been in this space for a long time and have learned a lot. So that user network that we have, the knowledge base that we have internally is a huge value add for our clients. And then what we really specialize in and what makes us different from any survey provider out there on the market today is our ability to resolve issues. So I didn't go very deep in my presentation today, but any negative responses to questions, not only can we route them to the right department, but we are going to actually get them to the right employee. So that means we have logic that is identifying the department, the skill, the location, helping those follow-up areas balance workload, and then tracking progress in real time. So employees who are managing the follow-up on their mobile devices or through telephones or computer are able to input, if there's delays. They're able to work with vendors within our solution if there's follow-up from a vendor. They're able to add notes and pictures and other things if it's maybe a facilities issue where they're adding notes about parts being ordered or whatever the case may be. So when you're out there and Joint Commission is surveying, you're able to see in real time where those issues are in the resolution process with notes, with pictures, with real detail, and all of that is happening in real time. So it's not an email that goes out after a survey to the support areas, or it could be, clinical follow-up as well. It's not an email that's going out. It is actually driving workflow in a push, not pull way. And I'm not sure if you know what I mean by that, but really pushing the completion of that resolution task.
Thank you, Chris. That does conclude all of the questions and answers that we've had from our participants today. However, this is not your last opportunity to ask Chris any questions regarding a continuous readiness program. Up on the screen, you should see our email address. It's info@centtac.com. Please feel free to email us any questions about how to implement the continuous readiness program or about the Centtac product. I'd like to thank all of our participants for their time this morning. We do hope that you'll join us for our next in our quarterly series. Thank you so much, and have a great day.